Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our speaker, Dr. Jacqueline Bixler. Jackie.
Good morning, or buenos dias, as we say. To begin, I thank Dr. President Steger for the invitation to speak, and I congratulate the students and families present today. My instructions were short, sweet, and amusing, so here goes. First, a question for you, graduates. How many of you have recently thanked one of your professors? It's okay, raise your hands, nothing to be embarrassed about. I suspect that nearly all of you have at one time or another thanked us for accepting late papers, for helping you figure out those secret codes, also known as DARs, for turning a blind eye when you stumbled into class Friday mornings with bar tattoos on your hands, and so on. Nonetheless, this is not a reminder that you forgot to thank us, but rather a lead up to the real question, which is, how many of you have had a professor thank you during the past semester? Raise your hands. Oh, that's a little bit of a weak showing there. Well, in the event that we have somehow neglected to thank you, I, on behalf of the faculty here at Virginia Tech, officially thank you for all that you have done to enrich our lives, to keep us young, to make us laugh, and to remind us of why we are here. Indeed, I often think of myself as something akin to a parasite, drawing constantly on my students for energy, amusement, new ideas, cool acronyms, and fashion tips. How else would I know that J. Crew is in, that brown boots are not to be worn with black pants? How else would I know the intricate rules of beer pong, or the meaning of such acronyms as FUBAR and BFE? A recent headline in the Chronicle of Higher Education caught my eye. It said, "Older professors are fewer and better than you think." This, in turn, reminded me of a word that I seem to find everywhere nowadays, and that word is vintage. Surely you have heard or seen this word used to peddle goods from places like Anthropology and Pottery Barn, and describe everything from jeans and jewelry to carpet beaters and toilet paper holders. Why, I found that even Virginia Tech uses the word vintage to sell a wide range of hokey gear, including t-shirts, sports posters, and yes, musical alarm clocks. The dictionary, I mean the online version, of course, defines vintage as representing the high quality of a past time, being the best of its kind, and being of a specified vintage, which in my case would mean 1980 vintage VT. The message is clear: older is better. Being a vintage professor not only makes me the best of my kind, but also means that I have had to adapt to a rapidly changing educational environment while retaining my high quality. When I arrived in 1980 at that school with the unwieldy name Virginia Polytechnic Institute and State University, or as my mother called it, Virginia Polyester Institute. Thank you, Mom. Terms such as online, internet, and download had not yet been coined, and the word like was not yet a primary particle of speech. Classrooms, textbooks, and chalkboards were our only teaching tools. Copies were made on a funny-smelling ditto machine, and a bored student's only option was to take a nap. No cell phones, no laptops, no iPods, no anything. Speaking of stuff, I accidentally bought a VT hoodie the other day. Fortunately, it came with a tag that explained that the straps running down the inside of the sleeves were all those indispensable gadgets. I've had a long dual career as professor and mother, so as I look out at you today, I inevitably think of my own children, the youngest of whom will graduate from Virginia Tech this spring. I like to believe that much of what we do or don't do as parents has a significant bearing on your lives. One of the many books that I read to my kids over and over again was The Bike Lesson, in which the father of the Bernstein Bears insists on teaching his young son how to ride a bicycle. Like you, Small Bear would prefer to skip the lessons, jump on the bike, and ride off, which he does at the end, and much better, I must say, than his father. The bike lesson is, of course, simply a metaphor for all those lessons that we try to give our children. Perhaps one day you will read the Bernstein Bears to your own children, who will, like you, be born knowing everything they need to know for the rest of their lives. My own childhood was not exactly geared towards success. Those were the days of the Cuban Missile Crisis, bomb shelters, and IQ tests. In the pursuit of superiority and supremacy, our country wanted to know who was smart. A score of 132 or above would have given me instant membership in a society known as Mensa, a term that in Mexican Spanish ironically means moron. Alas, my parents were informed that I did not have a high IQ. As if that weren't enough to convince me of my lack of potential, I was subjected to another test designed to identify future leaders. As you can probably guess, we were informed that I was not likely to be a leader, but a follower. So I accordingly spent most of my youth following my assigned script, doing what everyone else did, and quickly bowing to others' opinions. My students often ask me how I came to be a Spanish professor. Good question. In our part of Cleveland, diversity was limited to people, white people, with difficult last names like Bialowski, Sifke, Yalapi. My father worked as a mechanic while my mother stayed home and busily watched television. College was considered unnecessary for girls whose future was simply to get married and have babies. But I was, after all, a follower, so when most of my friends decided to go to Ohio University, I followed. By sophomore year, my classmates were leaving to study in Spain and Mexico, so naturally, I followed. But it wasn't long before graduation loomed ahead, and I had to face the question, what in the world was I going to do with a Spanish degree? The current Latino conquest of our country had not yet begun, so a degree in Spanish seemed next to useless. I found myself with two options. Graduate school seemed like an okay way to postpone the search for a real job, but the Peace Corps appealed to my wanderlust. Well, to make a long story short, you are looking at the only person known to have been rejected by the Peace Corps. My father always wanted me to be a teacher, but of course I poo-pooed that idea. Nonetheless, the day I taught my first Spanish class at the University of Kansas, I knew I had found my calling. Indeed, by the time my first group of students gave me a piñata containing several joints of marijuana, I had already discovered that teaching is the best high in the world. The students I teach, I'm happy to report, are not the same ones who rant at their parents and run up their credit cards. No. These are delightful, curious, respectful young people who continually convince me that I am right where I want and need to be. In a few minutes, you will become alumni of Virginia Tech. In English, alumni means former students who give money to their alma mater. But in Latin, alumnus also signifies a nourisher, one who raises or educates. So we expect you to do that, too. And now that we've reached the point, as parents and educators, where we've taught, or at least tried to teach you everything we can, we're going to let you ride your bike alone. You know where you want to go, and perhaps you even know how to get there. But if that's not the case, well then, just listen to what Shel Silverstein calls the voice. There is a voice inside of you that whispers all day long, I feel that this is right for me. I know that this is wrong. No teacher, preacher, parent, friend, or wise man can decide. What's right for you? Just listen to the voice that speaks inside. On behalf of the faculty and staff, both vintage and non-vintage here at Virginia Tech, I thank you. You don't just make our day, you make our lives. rich, fun, and rewarding. Congratulations, felicidades, graduates of 2010, and best wishes as you get on your bike and set off on the road that lies ahead. Go Hokies.